I'm Dan Rogers. Today we're here with David Prescott, who's running for the Amarillo City Council Place 3. David, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to have an opportunity to have a conversation.
Very good. Let's tell the voters a little bit about you and what you do, and then we'll get into why you want to jump on the city council.
My name is David Prescott. I moved to Amarillo in 1990, in December of 1989. Grew up in Oklahoma City. While I was in Oklahoma City, went one semester of school there and decided I was going to move out to Amarillo. My dad and stepmom lived out here. Went to WTSU before it became WTAMU, and started out in a wildlife biology program, wildlife science. Thought I wanted to be a game warden. Always loved the natural world, ecology and biology, and that love came from hunting and fishing in Oklahoma. So 2 years into that program at WT, they started an environmental science program, and that really piqued my interest, because at the time I think a game warden made about $30,000, and an environmental guy could make up to $60,000. And so as a young man with motivations to get financially secure, that's when I made the choice. Graduated in it would have been 1995 with a dual degree in environmental science and biology. Loved Amarillo the whole time I was going to school, mowing yards, working, cutting firewood, whatever it took. And I learned at a very young age, at 14, 15, that money gave you freedom. And that freedom was to be able to do what you wanted to do and do it the way you wanted to do it. And it was a good lesson growing up in Oklahoma. But again, graduated, married my college sweetheart, and bought a house. And in the summer of 1997, I was working for a regional environmental firm, had offices all over the United States. And the old fax machines, when you get the beep and they'd roll out, we're sitting there in the office one day, and there's three of us working for this company here in Amarillo. And on the fax, it says we're filing bankruptcy, and your last paycheck will be Friday. And I think it was maybe a Wednesday when we got this fax. And we're like, hey, what do we do now? At that time, we had about 7 clients, and we were doing the old underground storage tank cleanup work. Mm-hmm. And for the listeners, the tanks would leak at gas stations, and they would the diesel or the gasoline would impact the soil, and then sometimes it would get as deep as impacting the groundwater. And that's that's kind of work we were doing. Well, when this company filed bankruptcy, I just recently gotten some critical licensure that I needed with the state, and I said to myself, you know what, I can do this. And I was 26 years old at the time, and so I formed a company, and that company today is known as Talon LPE. It was extremely shoestring budget. Doesn't even begin to explain how tight the budget was when we started. But 28 years later, the company has grown exponentially. We handle soil and groundwater work for Fortune 500 companies, all the way down to small site assessments for individuals that are buying a commercial piece of property. And our headquarters is here in Amarillo. We have offices in Midland, San Antonio, Dallas, and Artesia, New Mexico, and a field office in Houston. So those are our locations where we have brick and mortar and employees. But it's been a very gratifying career, and what do we do at Talon? We solve complex environmental problems. That's what we do. That's why we exist.
So you're also a geologist?
So in the cleanup of soil and groundwater work, there's either professional engineers, professional geologists, or you'll have environmental scientists. So my degree gave me enough credit hours in geology to sit for for licensure with the Texas Board of Professional Geoscientists, and I've had that licensure since the program has been available in Texas.
Well, that's good. So if you have a train wreck, they call you.
They call us, and we do a lot of work for the local train providers, and very, very on alert right now for the extreme wildfire danger we're going to have tomorrow and the wind. So everyone out there, please be safe tomorrow. On Friday, it's going to be a rodeo. One of those days in the Panhandle where it makes us wonder, how much more grit do we have to survive this? But that wind will settle down tomorrow night, and Saturday will be beautiful. So just a bump in the road.
Bringing all that fresh air in from California.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. So what makes you want to get into politics and jump on the city council?
You know what? What makes me want to get into politics? I hate politics. I've learned very quickly that politics is it's very similar to anytime you get a group of humans together and you look under the hood, it gets a little nasty, gets a little confusing and nauseating. I hate politics. But do I love to serve? I do love to serve. And why do I love to serve? Because I think God gives us gifts. I think God gives us seasons in our lives when you can make a difference. And so why is this my season, and why do I think I have those gifts? Well, first, extensive business experience. I think you need to look at an individual, and you need to look at their track record. You can't look at what they're going to say right now. We're all saying the same thing. Everyone, we want the infrastructure, we want roads, we want, all those things that everything is saying. But what does the track record look like of an individual over the course of their professional career or their career? And have they dealt with the problems that we possibly would see with the city of Amarillo? No, I've never dealt with a $500 million budget, but I've dealt with $330 million assets. I've worked in the state of Texas on legislative appropriation requests for the Texas Board of Professional Geoscientists. As the past chair of the Amarillo Area Foundation, a very successful, well-endowed organization which gives lots of grants throughout the Texas Panhandle. And the top 26 counties, from Perryton to Hereford, from Dalhart to Childress, every community in between, including Amarillo, we have the exact same issues. It's just a matter of size and scale. Everybody needs better infrastructure. Everybody needs all the basic functions to lead and be able to provide for our citizens. So serving early on with the Red Cross here in Amarillo on their board, the Chamber of Commerce, the Golden Spread Council of Boy Scouts, where I was chair of that organization through a very, very trying time when we were going through the bankruptcy. The largest bankruptcy in the United States was the sexual assault victims through the Boy Scouts. How did we come together? 17 unique councils throughout Texas to keep Boy Scouts alive, Boy Scouts, and the values of Boy Scouts, or Scouting America now, as it's called, is critical. I mean, that is citizenship. That is what's a big piece of the glue. Again, going to the Amarillo Area Foundation, seeing the needs, and working with one of the best boards I've ever worked with in my life. And then most importantly, in 2013, Governor Rick Perry appointed me to the Texas Board of Professional Geoscientists, and that is the board which oversees professional licensure and regulation of geologists, geophysicists, and soil scientists in the state of Texas. And we're a leading agency within the state for national platforms and the national ability of how we're doing things in Texas and setting a standard with all other 50 states in the union. Governor Abbott reappointed me in 2019, and then in 2023, Governor Abbott appointed me the chair of the Texas Board of Professional Geoscientists. And so all of that to say, why do I want to get into politics? I don't like politics, but I want to get in, and I want to be a citizen that serves. And I think self-actualization in Maslow's hierarchy, when you reach that point, you give back. What does the next season look like for me? I'm 54. I'll be 55 this year. I have a lot of energy. I have an immense amount of education. Education's not everything. It's how you apply it. Like I said earlier, a BS in environmental science and biology, an MBA, because my company became successful, and I really needed to understand the numbers. I wanted to ask those questions, and I wanted to be able to decipher the information. I'm data-driven. I like metrics. I really, really like making key informed decisions based on data. I don't like speculation. I'm going to look into things as I go forward, as I've always done in my career. Finished up a MS, my master's in science and environmental science, and this semester right now I'm finishing up my last of my coursework for a PhD in ag science. I just, any of the components in a systems approach to natural resources is invigorating for me. So to answer your question, I think I have the skill set and the demeanor to be a good leader for the city of Amarillo.
Well, that's good. So what do you think are some of the main issues, say the top 3 issues that are before the city today that the voters are concerned about?
It's, and this has been I told you earlier, I've lived in the city for 35 years. I think I've been involved in the city for 35 years. I'm really involved in the city right now after just a couple weeks of learning and listening, and the folks, just like you and I meeting. We've never met, and it's a pleasure to get to know folks that are trying to make Amarillo a better place. What are the three things to me, and what have I heard? Well, roads are very important. The wastewater treatment plant and the infrastructure of the city, that is critical. I think that is number one. And then I think economic development would be number three. And all three of those, when I talked about a systems approach, all three of those are working together. All three of those, the roads are going to get us to and from, but the infrastructure and economic development, they're just in a symbiotic relationship that need to be supported.
So I guess the real question is, how do we pay for it all?
Yeah, what a great question.
Right.
What a great question.
That's what it boils down to. That's what nobody talks about.
You know, and you sit there and you go, how are you gonna? I mean, let's just look at it like we would look at our houses right now. How much have items and things gone up? How much has our car insurance gone up? How much has our house insurance gone up? How much more expensive is it to go to the grocery store? What does a pair of tires or 4 tires cost? How much has that gone up since COVID in five short years? What was it, yesterday or the day before? That was our 5th year anniversary of the time when it was declared a pandemic and just the wheels came off of everything 5 short years ago. But think of how much has changed and how much things cost more. And it's no different for the city. You know, the city is like any business. It's like any home budget. Insurance has gone up. You know, how many vehicles do we have within the city? How much have those tires gone up? How much has the insurance gone up to operate all those vehicles? What's the healthcare? I mean, everything has risen, but yet we're running on a lower budget. I was looking at some data earlier today, and our existing city council was able to cut the budget by, I think, $30 million. And you sit there and you go, how are you to do that? But yet we have the South plant, which is the Hollywood Road wastewater treatment plant, and the North plant, which is River Road. And we know we need to replace. We know we need to replace and augment the South plant. For 2 years, we've been in an enforcement action with the TCQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. The city of Amarillo is in violation, direct violation of the TCQ in Austin on operating that wastewater treatment plant correctly. So what happens if we don't fix that plant? You know, the raw sewage goes into a playa, which is adjacent. Many times that's occurred. And to be fair, that plant had a big failure when we had the floods in 23. When all that water came through, we were very, very close to losing that plant. Can you divert that? You can divert some of it, you know, north, but most of that plant has to be upgraded. The existing mayor, quote, "We're holding it together with duct tape and baling wire. We're holding it together with duct tape and baling wire." So when I talk to the city manager about this, and I say, you know, what do you expect the cost to be? And I mean, it could exceed very easily $750 to $800 million. And I'm going to get to your question that how do we pay for this? That's a basic necessity. That is not a shiny thing. That is not a item that should be taken lightly. And for decades, we have prided ourselves in being the lowest tax rate, you know, in the state. Well, is this coming to bite us now? Is finally some group going to have to address this? Because in 5 years, if we can't keep operating that plant, maybe that's why we can't get any more build out right now. If you look at the homes in Amarillo National's economic forecast, I mean, we're 50% of what Lubbock's doing. In some thirds, only 33% of the new construction that is occurring 127 miles down the road on I-27 or 120 miles on I-27. So we have to deal with that. And what I understand is the existing city council has started at least the feasibility and the assessment phase and hired an engineering firm to look at what it's going to take. But what happens, how much steel and aluminum is in a wastewater treatment plant, an $800 million project? And what have we seen just recently? 25-50% increase because of tariffs. So did we just increase the cost of this project by $80 million? I mean, or more, you know, looking at the math on what steel would need to be used. So that is a huge issue that we need to look at. How do we pay for those kind of things? How do we pay for the continued upgrades that are needed on the northwest side of town? The water there. How do we fix the loaders that are down at the waste transfer station? On and on and on. How many miles of road can we repair? What is the cost to repair 1 mile of road in the city right now? It is astronomical what things are costing. So are we going to be able to get federal money? I hope so. And I guess Ronnie Jackson has told us that we have $38 million to start the feasibility. $38 million is a long ways away from $800 million for one plant. But what if we need to get River Road started? How are we going to handle that? So, we're talking extreme costs coming up that are non-negotiable. These are non-negotiable costs because if you can't flush your toilet and I can't flush mine, or even when we flush it and it goes out into an open playa, those are significant consequences for us as a city, and that's not forward thinking. Children hope, adults plan. We need to be planning, and we need to get this stuff taken care of.
I guess my question is, why does it cost so much to build a wastewater plant? You could have sedimentation ponds.
You could.
And that shouldn't cost that much to put in, and at least get us by temporarily.
That would be a question I would have to go with the experts on that. I am not an expert in building wastewater treatment centers. I can sure look at the cost. I could sure look and evaluate, does that make sense? But when I talk to the city manager about this, and those are the numbers he's giving me on what this could cost, we all know what the cost of large-scale projects. And are we building for what we need now, or are we going to build it out for what we need in 50 years? And what does that growth rate look like?
I guess I would look at it, is it the price or the cost? Two different things.
Two unique things. Very, very unique. Is it the price or the cost? And what is the price? Is the price of us failing, the price of us not building it out, or are we looking at a dollar value today because we know that dollars spent today, it's only going to continue to go up. Cost is going up. So what is the dollar value today? And it's a unique situation, and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I don't understand why things have to cost more. Mm-hmm. In a real economy, if things were working properly, everything should cost less.
Explain, please. Help me understand.
Well, because of economies of scale and efficiencies and better ways and cheaper ways. They built their concrete plant. Trucks are paid for. So why doesn't concrete costs go down over time instead of up? Right.
Right.
Why do automobiles always cost more when their plants paid for, their robots are paid for, and they're not paying their employees anymore? So why wouldn't costs go down? What's really wrong?
I think what this question's lending to is it profit? Are you saying profit? Is it capitalism? Is it
well, it's regulation.
Regulation.
That creates a lot of problems. And I think it's because we have a debt-based monetary system.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
So everybody has to borrow more money or they go broke.
Right. And when money's
cheap. They changed that about 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Before, people didn't have to borrow. They could save, costs went down, and they could expand. And that's when the real wealth in America was created.
I agree. Yes, sir.
And now, with the way the system's set up, everybody has to tax more, spend more, borrow more. Mm-hmm. That's not a good system.
No.
So maybe we need to look at the root cause of the problem and fix that, mm-hmm. and focus on that. Because when you said the cost of tires, everything that the citizens buy has gone up. Everything the city buys has gone up. Mm-hmm. What happens when people simply can't afford more taxes?
You don't get it. And then ultimately, when the supply-demand curve crosses each other and supply is above, and you've got to start at least paying the basic minimums, then the price will come down. It's a simple supply-demand curve equation at that point.
I guess what I'm saying is, how are we going to pay if we don't have the money budgeted for the sewer plant, and it's going to cost almost $1 billion.
Right.
Probably before it's built, it'll be more than that.
Could be, yes, sir.
How's that going to be paid for? Is it you just going to raise taxes?
No.
Property taxes?
What do we need to do? What is the best solution?
Yeah.
It's to get as lean as you can. What would we do in business if we had a huge CapEx, capital expenditure cost? You would get as lean as you can. You would be looking at, is this the only priority? How do you have multiple departments and groups? How are you going to do that? That transparency and that budget review has to occur, or it's not going to work. And you're going to have to get outside incentives. Can you get any more money from Washington, D.C.? Can we get any more from Austin? Can we get this raised? And
what if I build the plant and you lease it from me? Right.
Well, that would be I would imagine with the cost of money and what you would expect on a strong return, that is a long-term solution that somebody's going to have to pay for, sir.
But is that something to think about? Could a group of investors come in, build the plant, and lease it to the city?
I don't know why it wouldn't be an option you could look at. Why would you not look at that?
Because they're going to make sure that plant gets built worth the money.
Absolutely there.
That's my point.
Okay.
Right?
I understand.
The city, they see city money, the price doubles.
Then you need stewardship, you need guidance, and you need folks that care, because that's, you have a $500 million a year entity, and you've got 5 individuals, the mayor and 4 council people. That's your board of directors. That's what you're electing here right now. This is very wise counsel that you're talking about. And are you comparing? But even more than that, when the city hires individuals, when they hire a city manager, when they hire other individuals, just like in our businesses, are we not hiring the individuals that are experts in budget control? Are we not hiring the individuals that are experts in this type of activity, or individuals that have seen how this has been done? Who are the industry experts in building these plants if needed? Who are those 3 people? I mean, these aren't folks that you're just going to find anywhere that are going to be able to build it and build it well so we can forecast the growth of the city. All of the things you're talking about is fiduciary responsibility, and it's also giving the control to the individuals who have the knowledge to get this done. If it makes sense and that's something that the city can do, why would we not do it? It's you and I's money that we're talking about. It's everybody's money out there that we're talking about. And so I hope to God it's a $400 million spend. But when the individuals that have done it, have seen it happening, and that are experiencing it throughout the state and throughout this region are saying these numbers, I would have to believe that they're not far off. But do you verify? Do you trust but verify, as Reagan said? Absolutely you do.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah.
I think he had it backwards. I think you verify.
Before you trust.
And then trust.
Right. But if you hire the right folks, you've got to give some leeway, and you've got to give some leash to the folks. And that's their specialty and their expertise.
Well, I'm just thinking, as a city council, they need to think a little bit. They need to think maybe a little outside the box, and not just take what somebody
the low bid
wants to do. Yeah, you don't want to take the low bid.
No.
And you want to do it right for the future and make it expandable for the future.
Absolutely.
At less cost in the future.
And hopefully, if you do it right, like you said, that one piece becomes less expensive. And if we can automate it, or however we do it, we use technology to leverage that piece of equipment or that plant or whatever for a longer period of time.
You probably won't know this, but I was just curious. Do you know how many million gallons a day flow into that plant?
Yeah, the north plant is, I want to say, like 12, and the south plant 16 million. Per the City of Amarillo website. And we're at 85% capacity on the south plant right now.
Yeah, that's when you have to make plans per TCEQ.
Yeah, and then, well, 70. I think 75 starts the timer moving, and that might be where. And then the spills that we've had have created that enforcement action with those guys.
Well, I guess the other thing you could do is you could put a moratorium on any new construction that serves that plant and force it outside the city.
And maybe that's what we've seen with all the building, and it's all going septic right now, and the additional drains on groundwater close to the city because everybody's building outside. Because, again, you look at that economic report, and is that why we're not getting near as many new residential starts? 454 or 524, I might have my numbers transposed, versus 2/3 less than Lubbock right now?
So it sounds to me like this is a problem that started 30 years ago, right?
I think so.
And nobody had the foresight to plan ahead in previous councils. So in the last few councils, it's becoming an issue.
I think there has to be a number. There has to be a delta that is telling us what the growth is. What is the growth going to be? I mean, we can project that. We know that mathematically, what our growth is, what our growth should be. And if we have constantly had, how do you say it? Kick the can down the road, or push off and let's let somebody else worry about it. It's not any different than what's going on in the federal government right now. I mean, our national deficit is what? I mean, what is the national debt?
I don't think they really know, but it's like $36 trillion.
$36 trillion.
But it goes up
every
million a minute or something.
Yeah. So is it any different than that? That someday else it'll be somebody's problem and it'll be a real bad problem when it arises? Have we balanced the budget like we do in our houses? Have we planned for when the water heater goes out? Have we planned? No, we have not. And why is that? Because I can get 5 more years and I can tell you this. That is not being a good steward. That is not what a leader does. A leader gives the good news and a leader gives the bad news. If I know in my company I'm getting ready to hit this rough patch, all hands on deck, we're going to work through it, and there's better days ahead if we all row together. But if we get this division and going back to politics, and I'm not really going to address this because I've got my agenda right now, that is a disservice to the individuals in this city. That's a disservice to me. That's a disservice to you, and we can't deal with that. So, I mean, is it going to be painful? It could be painful to have to do that. Or is it going to be worse that you got to put a septic system in your house because you can't, because the TCEQ comes in and shuts it off at the main line going into the plant? I don't think they would do that. I think that's a worst case Armageddon scenario. But my goodness, why are we not planning? Are we adults and grown up professional people in the city? Yes, we are. So we need to act like it and get it done.
Yeah, and plan for the future.
Yeah. Again, children hope, adults plan.
Yeah. Well, that's why we need business people.
I agree.
In these positions, because they've been in this situation and they've had to resolve these issues, maybe not on this scale,
right,
but similar. And that's why we need a business person's perspective.
Yeah, and I think I bring that. I know I bring it. I don't think I bring it. I know I bring that. And the TCEQ for 30 years has been one of our largest, a group that I've dealt with for the 27 years that I've been in business has been a very large client of ours in different aspects.
I guess the other big issue that's out there in the news that people are talking about is the AEDC issue, and the range.
Yes, sir.
What is your stance on all that?
I think on the AEDC, I don't think on the AEDC, you have to have economic development. It's a very competitive world out there. I listened to everything that Mr. Fairley said on the AEDC review. I question the leadership of the city for several cycles. If the metric was X being jobs created, or, if that really wasn't being met, why wasn't that being looked at? And to get to this point, was it that there was a deep dive into the ADC, or was it because the whole issue came up with the range monetary transaction? For total transparency, I personally, my company, wrote a check for $25,000 to the range. We were a 1-year member of the range. Why? As I've said, my entire career has been about groundwater. My entire career has been about protecting that vital resource, the Ogallala, the Santa Rosa Dockham here in the Panhandle. And without that, we are in a extremely dry, arid climate. 16 inches of rain. The Ogallala right now is getting, in some areas, most of the time it's a drawdown. If you get any recharge at all, it's a 1/10 of an inch, if you're lucky. I mean, we're drawing down feet of a resource that is non-replenishable. Why did Talon join the range, my company? You look back to the genesis of the range and the Research Park Triangle in the Carolinas. There's the Permian Basin initiative. When the range first came on the scene, it was strictly to augment the medical school, the Texas Medical School, the pharmacy, and the vet school. It's a very unique piece we have in Amarillo. I've not heard that there is another city. There are other MSAs, metropolitan statistical areas, that have the three. But for a city the size of Amarillo to have all three of them out on Sonsi, it is a incubator for growth. It is an incubator to bring in the Archer Daniel Midlands, the Bears, all of the companies that are large animal, protein converters like what we do here. And that is the original industry in the Texas Panhandle. Why is Amarillo here? It was a stop for cattle to be loaded onto rail. And that is how we got our start. We have the best area in the country for the conversion of grasses to protein to human consumption. And so the range was brought on to do that. Now let's go fast forward. Is the monetary piece of how the ADC handled that? There's some clear violations of how that was done in perception. But why hasn't anybody been charged yet? If it was a crime, asking individuals in law enforcement, if there was an issue of $750,000 of blatant fraud or theft, why wouldn't the FBI have taken care of that 5 days before any of us heard about it? They would have if there had been a problem. And this isn't about the range. This is about proper management of those resources and channels. And I think it could have been handled differently. The individuals at the ADC, they're volunteer positions. Those folks care about this community as much as anybody. I think it could have been handled a lot better. I don't think it needed to become a politicized issue. I would ask the question on the report out that the city council gave. There's some valid questions in there, but there's also it's a little slanted. So let's get an outside opinion on what this really means and how does this look. Economic development is critical because if we don't grow and we don't have good jobs, how are we going to increase the tax base to pay for the things that we need on the infrastructure that you and I've already discussed about? I stand behind what Talon did with the range. If there is fraud, I guarantee you, I am the first one that's jumping up and down. I want my money back because I wrote personally out of my pocket a check for $25,000 because I believe in the mission of what they're doing. And there are some incredible things going on. And again, with the ADC, we need some economic group to help us bring in these large companies. Now, is it a better plan per what we heard in the report out? Maybe we don't give them as much. Maybe we need to tighten that down. Is it a metric of how many jobs are created, or is it a metric of what the tax base is? Why do we need those companies here, and how do we move forward?
I think everybody wants economic growth and good companies to come to town. I think some people might say that, well, for instance, did you get a grant from the AEDC to start your company?
I did not. I
think that's the point, right?
Right.
So if you have, I think a lot of people think that if you have good infrastructure, good roads, streets, safe community, good schools,
right,
low taxes, businesses are going to come. You don't need to bribe them with a grant or lower taxes. To me, if you have to give somebody a property tax abatement to come to town, what's that tell you? Your taxes are too high. You just admitted it publicly because you have to give people a break because they can't afford to come here without it, right? That's a problem.
You know, I would respectfully disagree on that because I believe that every community wants these companies. They want companies to come. They want additional base companies. And for instance, did I apply in Amarillo for Talon? Absolutely, I didn't. This is where I lived. This is where I was going to set my shingle out in front of the place. But would I look if I was going to relocate it or add an additional office for Fort Collins, for instance, had an office in Fort Collins, or if I was going to go to Oklahoma City, or I'm looking for additional properties in Decatur, the first thing I'm going to do is what is the local EDC going to do to entice my business? Is there a break? Is that a wise business decision? And everything that we've been talking about, is that a looking at ways to help me establish in a new market? Now, if that is the rules and that's the programs that are set up, that's why would you not play in that space? And so in Amarillo, if a competitor came here, which several environmental competitors have looked at coming here and receiving ADC grants. Does that upset me? Absolutely it does, because I built my business here. How upset are the convenience store guys when Buc-ee's came here? I mean,
Exactly.
that's a prime example. The families that run the convenience stores, most of the convenience stores, the family-owned ones, have done great things for the city. And all it did was take $1.5 million a day out of this, but at least it's still here in Amarillo. So how do you play that game? And this is outside my scope on, the economic development. But if every other city of our size that has the basic tenets that Amarillo does, and I have $1 million project, and I'm going to spend it either in Amarillo or I'm going to spend it in Abilene, and Abilene makes my bottom dollar cost $850,000, and it's still $1 million in Amarillo, where are you going to go?
I'm not going to take government money.
Yeah, well,
that's me.
That's you.
It's philosophical. I would starve first
before you did it, but
I can't do it.
Well, but how many folks do? And if that's the game,
that's the problem.
That's the problem. And
because
so,
then it never ends.
Yeah, and in Amarillo, it does not have the influx of new business. We can't retain our youth and our best and brightest, and they end up in Frisco. Who does it? They end up in Denton. Who does it? They end up in other areas. And what do we become? Do we become another city that's the same as we see up and down the I-27 corridor all the way to Midland, that we're losing all of our generational and what would be industrial or institutional knowledge? You have to play the game to grow. And the game would be, now you have an ethos that says, I'm not going to take that money. But if it is a publicly traded firm that is going to get that, they don't have that same ethos that you do. And at that point, what do you do to continue to grow? I mean, if we open up and put our shingle, we're not doing any economic development. Do we stay at a 1% growth? Does that really bring anybody in?
I personally think you would grow a lot more, because I think you would attract businesses that don't want to be involved in government.
Why are they not coming now then?
Well, I think because of our infrastructure, our in my opinion, the educational system, schools, and the political climate, right? So, and sometimes things morph into, they start out with a really good intention.
Right.
And then it's perception, maybe not reality, but businesses then perceive that maybe they're trying to keep businesses out and reduce competition instead of bring other businesses in to compete with them.
Right. I could see that.
So you create that dynamic that if you didn't have to do that, to me, you shouldn't have it, because it's morally wrong from a capitalism standpoint, because you're intermingling business with government.
Through the tax incentive, through the base.
Yeah, you're trying to effectively.
It's an unfair advantage.
You can call it an incentive. If it was done in the private world, they call it a bribe, right?
Yes, sir.
So because other people do it, does it make it right? I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. It's done all over the state.
All over the.
There's a lot of things
States
that I disagree with,
Yeah.
but I'm a very simple-minded person, and I don't have the understanding to bend those concepts.
Yeah. Is there, an advantage? I mean, what would, again, with the.
I guess we did very well for 100 plus years without it, right? And then when we get it, growth slows down. It doesn't speed up.
I don't know.
But you got to have good schools.
Right.
You got to have a different tax system that doesn't punish people for improving their property. Nobody wants to improve their property, because if they do, the appraisal district will raise their values and they can't afford it.
Yeah, and that's.
So you create a city that looks like crap. Why don't you incentivize people to improve their property, not disincentivize them?
I mean, that's.
Why don't you encourage people to go to public schools by having great curriculum, having order, discipline, and doing what the parents want, right? Instead of being mandated by the state.
Right. Local
control. If you have good schools, that's going to do wonders to bring in good business. Mm-hmm. And for the people that live here to stay here and create businesses just like you did. Mm-hmm. You don't really need to bring any business in. Just nurture the ones you have, right? And let them grow, and don't take all what they produce in taxes.
When was the ADC created? You probably know.
I think it was in the early 90s.
Early 90s. So we're dealing, how does David Prescott make a difference if elected to city council with the rules of the game that he has on a wastewater treatment plant in the next 5 to 7 years that is going to be challenged? What we're talking about is a total shift in a generational issue. A lot of people don't think like this anymore. A lot of people don't. What is community to people right now? What is citizenship? It is so easy to hide away and be on social and just fire barb after barb because you never see them. That wasn't how it was. Yeah. And you and I'm so thankful I grew up in a time without social media and yeah. telephones.
Same
so
here.
we're talking about an entire community approach. We're talking about an approach to changing so many things that in 5 years, David Prescott as a city council member is not going to be able to achieve. But how do I achieve, or how do we achieve as a city getting these basic infrastructure things? And then hopefully our churches, hopefully there's some mandates on schools, and hopefully leaders like you will continue to educate people and bring that out. But our ship is rudderless right now as a country in certain aspects. Now we're seeing some great things happening, but how long? What's going to happen in 4 more years? Are we going to immediately go as far as we fix things? Are they going to go as far back to the left? This is on a national stage. I'm just trying to make a difference in Amarillo, Texas, on a few things, and so if we're not competitive in getting these companies, would Sasike have come here without the incentives? And I don't. Is Sasike turning the model? I don't know. Would Bell Helicopter be here, or would they be in Midland? I don't know if they had not gotten those original incentives. There are a lot of people I know were vying for the state of Texas second vet school. That was a huge win for Amarillo. So how do we stay competitive if that's the rules of the game? It might not set well with us, but if that's the rules that we're allowed to play by, and that's the rules everybody else is playing by, that sounds to me like the old cartoon where the king is sitting there and his knights are getting ready to ride out into the field of battle, and there's the guy with the Gatling gun going, "I've got this Gatling gun for you." And he says, "No, I don't have time for this. I've got to go here." But if that moved and that was a force multiplier for us as a city, why would we not take advantage of that? And I understand the ethos of that, and I don't want the money, and that's your choice. But if that's the expectation of business, if that's the expectation of what growth is now, is that why we need growth, we need good jobs, and that job maybe will ultimately allow for more time as a family to really understand what those values are, and maybe more study. It is cyclic. We know history's cyclic. We know that.
I guess what I'm trying to get at, though, is you can spend a lot of money bringing all these jobs to town, but if you haven't put the money into the infrastructure, they're not going to come no matter how much money you pay them.
Right.
Is what I'm trying to get at. So the $20 million a year that for 30 years that we put into the AEDC, that's only, according to Alex Fairley, said that in the last 15 years he could only come up with 379 jobs. Right.
Yeah.
That would have built that sewer plant.
Back then it would have.
And if you'd have put that $20 million in the bank on interest at 9% for the full 15 years, you'd have built two, both of them. So I guess that's what I'm getting at. Should we focus on the infrastructure and tell businesses we're not going to pay you to come, but you're welcome to come for a while until we get this straightened out?
They're welcome.
Because you got $25 million a year that we've got to use for something. Maybe it needs to be redirected to these infrastructure projects and tell businesses that want our money, you're welcome to come. We're working on our infrastructure. If you want to go to some town that's not focusing on their infrastructure, good luck.
Well,
and see what they say.
Well, the towns that are taking care of their infrastructure have enough of a tax base to take care of it, or they wouldn't do it. I mean, why do these?
But to me, it's more important to focus on the infrastructure to build your tax base.
Right.
And you can't build your tax base if you ignore your infrastructure.
Let's go back to a question you said just a minute ago. You said $20 million a year. So we know that the ADC monies did not. It wasn't 270. It took from inception to now, correct? 270 to get to $270 million. Right? Is that the total amount of money?
Well, I think you did that over a 15-year period. I think they've got like $85 million in the bank.
Yeah,
and it brings in $25 million in sales tax revenue today.
Right.
Not as much previous. I mean, it started out like $18 million, and it varied.
My clarifying question would be: you said that money would have already built those two plants, but if we looked at the actual dollars that were coming in, clearly it was $5 million, $6 million, and then it grew, and we've grown to this corpus that we have of $90 million. Well, no, it wouldn't build those plants, because if we have 90 million, let's say 90 million is what we have in cash right now, and there was an additional, let's say 180 million, no, that's half of one plant right now. That is not both plants being built on
over 30
dollars.
Years, though. He only did 15,
right?
Half. But I don't know what the tax revenue was. Now it's bringing in 25 million a year. So let's say it started out at 8 million, then went to 9, 10. Whatever, you're bringing in, if that money would have been invested over a 30-year period, that amount of money, we would have plenty of money to build both plants today.
I would agree with that.
Is what I'm saying.
With the capital gains.
And you have right at $100 million laying there right now. Mm-hmm. And you would have saved all the money that went, the $2.5 million a year that went to administration.
Right.
On top of it.
So do you get the ADC and put $100 million into one of the wastewater treatment plants and an $800 million spend right now?
Well, I mean, we're spending, I'm saying if they only did 379 jobs in 15 years,
See,
20 million times 15.
I would really challenge that.
For nearly $500 million, that's not a very good return on your money.
No, it's not an investment that you would make, you or I would make. No, absolutely not. But there, I think that report, we only have one individual's opinion on that report. We have an individual that was hand-selected by the mayor to give us that report. Why immediately was it Mr. Fairley's name to give us that report? Why? There are excellent firms that can give us an unbiased opinion on what and how many jobs were done.
Maybe he couldn't beat the price.
Maybe he couldn't. Freeze free, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, so at what point, I mean, I know on the vet school, I'm looking at that going, man, that's a lot. But I'm glad to have the second vet school in Texas here. I think that's a really, really strong selling point. And that's really good. Why would you not put it at the beef capital place? But we didn't even take into the spend of the 400 students. I guess our first group came through. And the mayor himself said this is a fantastic deal when he was at the white coat ceremony. Are we politicking? Are we really looking at what value is? What is value? I mean, are we growing? Are we proud of this city? Are we proud and trying to bring in these things? I am. I've hung my hat here for 35 years. And I want my kids to be proud. I want them to have opportunities. I want them to have educational opportunities here. I want them to come in, and I would hope that they would continue the legacy of what I've built. Tens and tens of millions of dollars in salaries, that we've given. But is it, it's that nauseating piece of this. Could they do better? Yeah, they could do better. Could these dollars be spent better? Is it time to gut it? Is it time to gut it? No, it's not time to gut it, because this is the rules and this is the way it's being played.
The good thing is all this came out. We can see some issues and we can figure out how to fix them and move forward.
Right.
Whatever the voters or the city council chooses,
whatever the voters choose
is the way it ought to go. But I don't think any elected official that I know of wants to get rid of the AEDC. Not that I know of. I'm just throwing that out there because I'm thinking, well, why did we do this? Why did they tell Tech to get lost and put them in Lubbock? We could have had it for nothing. And I told them 10 years ago, why don't you scrape 10 city blocks downtown and give it to Tech? Yeah. They've always wanted to be here.
Could we have gotten it for nothing?
Yeah, they wanted to come to Amarillo in the 30s.
No, I'm
the
saying
city ran them
recently
off.
with the vet school.
Well, the vet school wanted to come. Why didn't you scrape 10 square blocks downtown, put them downtown? Your problem's over.
Well, we had free land out there, or not free land, but there was land available.
But is it even in the city limits?
Yeah, it's in the city limits now.
Barely.
Yeah, it's in the city.
But I mean, why didn't they put it downtown? They want to spend all this money to rejuvenate downtown.
I mean, and not being argumentative, but what would the cost have been to scrape 10 city blocks and buy that property? I mean, that cost.
I could have done it for a little of nothing.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I got an excavator.
Yeah, but you got to buy the land from whoever owns it, and
A lot of it's just vacant buildings sitting there. I mean, there's buildings all over downtown that are empty.
Right.
But it's kind of been hollowed out because they punish people for improving their property.
Right.
I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
But then they take one street and spend all this taxpayer money on.
Right.
And then they put seedy bars in there that create problems.
Right.
That didn't bring anybody in during the day. You need to bring business in during the day, right?
Yeah, I'm at 9th and Monroe. That's my location.
Yeah,
I
you're
building
there.
and I know exactly what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
did all the upgrades, and it went from X to Y, and it's very challenging to get the return, but it's cheaper than new build. It's cheaper than building a new building, and I need a facility for my office downtown, and it's better than renting. And so it's a good
eventually
decision.
the prices will get so high outside of town that they'll come back, and people hopefully will rebuild stuff downtown.
Let's hope. I mean, that's the intent.
Regentrify is the fancy word.
Yeah, regentrify, or just thank goodness that that architectural style is coming back and a little more rustic, and I like it. I like it down where I'm at. So
Yeah,
it's a good spot.
Yeah. I like downtown. I'm trying to say, how do we improve it without spending any taxpayer money and bring in business that will generate more business?
You know, it goes back. If you're talking apples to apples with other areas and the incentives are there, how can a business group not look at the incentives to improve their bottom line? How can you do that in the environment we're in today?
Well, that's going to be each individual business's decision.
Right.
I understand that's how people think today. It's all about how much money can the government give me.
And how much profits can we make at the end of the day as a business owner?
And whose money is it that they're getting?
Well,
it's like the convention center argument. They want to put it on the property owners.
Yeah.
After they turned it down twice.
Yeah. I have the convention center. It's I've always likened it to. I have two boys. They're grown now, but I likened it when that was going on to. My son comes to me and asks me if he can borrow the car. No, you can't borrow the car. Next night he goes and asks his mom, can I borrow the car? No, can't borrow the car. We go out Saturday morning, there's a 6-pack of beer in the back of the car and a dent in the front. That's what happened on the Civic Center. We asked once, voted it down, asked twice, voted it down. We tried to do it again, but it didn't work. Got a dent in the 6-pack, found in the back seat. So when the voters speak, by all means, that's it. That's the end.
Shouldn't go around the voter.
Yeah, it shouldn't go around the voter. And we can agree to disagree, or we can just flat out disagree. But it's how you carry yourself, and it's your intent, and it's where you're aiming for. And at the end of the day, we're all Amarillo folks. Yeah, we're all growing here. I mean, this is where we live. This is where we worship. This is where we eat. I called Tom up, and before I ran for office, and I was going to run. I was already ready to run. I called my competitor up and I said, we never met. But I said, the measure of a win in this is you win, that's awesome. I'm going to stand behind you. I'm going to help you any way I can. I'm going to bring my skill set to you. And if I win, I hope it's reciprocating. But I think the real measure is if we see each other out at Hofbrau with our wives, that the wives sit there and they have a conversation, they laugh at us because I'm coming up and I'm giving you a handshake, I'm going to give you a hug, and then we're going to argue who's going to buy dinner. Because we've both been in the arena. And, it gets so, again, I said earlier, I hate politics. I hate this division. And it's good for healthy debate. I think we've had healthy, good debate today.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic to think about things differently. I think that's what it is. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Why is that? So we can listen twice as much as we talk. Gave us 2 eyes to look and see. But when I told Tom that, it was refreshing. And I said, Tom, we're going to keep this right. First thing I hear when Tom's sick is, man, I'm praying for you. I'm hoping you. Tom calls me the second he gets out of the hospital. That's how it should be.
Sure.
This isn't a.
Well, I think most campaigns that I've seen, that candidates actually become friends.
Yeah. Why would you?
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah. I mean, who are your friends? They're your friends that are in the mud and muck and getting blood.
I look at it a little bit different, of course, from my perspective. I want to see as many people as we can get in each race.
Absolutely.
I have people call me, Dan, don't find anybody to run against me because I don't. I'm like, you don't have to worry about that. If you're doing a good job, you're going to not have any issue. Dan, but to me, it's about getting good quality people in the race so that you can discuss things, and that's how you come up with ideas and solutions.
Yeah,
right.
I agree with that 100%.
It's not about personality and who's better and who's not.
Who's backing you and who's not backing
Anybody that steps up and runs for public office, I have a huge respect for and appreciate it. And what I want people to understand is they should get involved, maybe not as a candidate, but they need to come to your city council meetings, the county commissioners meetings, school board meetings. If they'll just show up and listen, then they'll understand. They'll be the ones with the solutions.
Absolutely.
It's the average person that's watching this that will tell you how to fix that plant, because he was an engineer for Black & Veatch, and they had this problem in Iran in 1972.
You're exactly right. Because that's what you need. It takes a village of individuals. And what I was going to say, those 5 individuals that are there now, you got to give them praise.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got in the arena and you were elected, thank you for serving. Thank you for doing that. My question on that would be, do you win the Super Bowl with the team you start with? Or do you trade up and trade folks and get individuals? If your right tackle is not performing well and you have a better right tackle for this season and this opponent that you have through this season, does it make sense to move those folks around? Yes, it does. It would be the same in our businesses. If we have an underperforming employee and there's a better employee that's going to get the job done better for us, you make those changes. That's called life. And is this council done good things? They've done some good things. Have they done some things that I don't agree with? Absolutely. I think we would all say that. But is David Prescott better served at this moment, in all respect and in humility, for what we're dealing with the TCQ? I think I bring a skill set. It's a very specialized skill set. And I think I bring that to the table right now. Has Dom done a fantastic job for the police force and the firemen? Absolutely, yes. Clearly. They endorsed him that quick. And I went to all those things. Those guys love him. And, I mean, that's a legacy issue, which is very, very commendable. But this season, that was that season. What's this season look like as we go forward? And who is better served? It's up to the voter to decide that. Hence why I threw my name in the hat.
Well, I don't think you could close any better than that.
Well,
I would, so go to davidprescottforamarillo.com. Is that
that's
true?
it, davidprescottforamarillo.com. Absolutely.
And is there any closing thoughts you want to give the voters?
I think it's everyone wants to support Amarillo. That's why you run. What is it, $10 a meeting or $10 a month? I don't even know. Like you said,
I think they get $10 a meeting.
I mean, it's costing me more to drive over there than it is, and to take the beating that you get on social media and just all the
yeah, just ignore all that.
Yeah, you just gotta push that to the side. But it's the 35 years I've lived in this city, and I had an interview before this. I've had this interview with you now, and it's just listening and thinking. Now tonight, after I get done eating dinner, I'm going to sit down at my house and I'm going to replay this conversation several times in my, that's how I process things. And I'm going to be thinking about the things that you've said, and it's broadening my mind. I had an excellent interview yesterday with David Elizada with Andrea's project, and I learned so much. I told my wife last night when I got home, I was like, this city has so many cool things and so many things happening, and there's so many people that are pulling and trying to make it right, and then you compound that with what I've seen with the generosity through the Panhandle Gives, and just the education and the research we're doing. You know, we should be an area that is with the weather we get, the dry climate. You've got to have grit and tenacity to be
The
here.
transportation hub.
Yeah, I mean, this is
And the airport.
right.
I mean, we have the best infrastructure, really.
We live
location
the American dream
in
here
the
with,
world.
and if it's longer than 15 minutes to go somewhere for dinner, that's too damn long in Amarillo, right? Why would we go 15 minutes?
Yeah.
But
Or
what
you
I'm saying,
have to
at the
wait in
end-
line. You're like, I'm like, it's time to go to Austin.
Yeah,
Get
but
an attitude adjustment.
just in closing, our best years are ahead of us if we just come together and row in the same direction.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that. And how do we do that? There's a lot of ways to get to work. You got to work one way, and we're very close. Our offices are very close. I might have gone a totally different way, but you know what? We got to work together, today. And
Yeah.
I think we have to remember that. I'd be honored to have the position. If I don't get the position, I support Amarillo, and I'm going to continue to row for Amarillo. And that's how I'd end it.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming by, and good luck out there on the campaign, and
Right?
enjoy the run. I mean, the best thing I think is all the people you're going to meet,
Yeah, it's awesome.
and that's what it's all about.
Right.
Everything in life, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's about people.
And how we handle ourselves as we go through
Yep.
that life.
Yep. All right, David Prescott for Amarillo.com.
Thank you, sir.